Hi, this is Sonny and welcome to another episode of TFI Insight. And today we have with us Haldo Sponton, VP of Technology and Head of AI at Globant. Haldo, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thank you everyone who is watching this. It's nice to be here representing Globant as a VP of Technology and also as a Head of AI Development.
Let's talk about Globant a bit. Just tell our viewers, what does the company do?
Well, we are a player in the IT software development and stuff in the IT professional services world. We are a 12,000 people company with offices all around the world in 16 countries. And we basically do that. We combine digital transformation with design, engineering, and we do really big projects at scale.
Globant is trying to kind of change the way we write software, and you're calling something called augmented coding. So what I want to understand, a couple of course, there are so many things to talk about today, but let's start with why do you think you need to change the way we deal with software? And then we will talk about augmented coding, but let's start with why.
First of all, the software development, let's say, industry is something that hasn't been reinvented that much in the last decade, let's say. So with the leverage of modern artificial intelligence techniques, we found a lot of places where we could have, or we could transform the way we do software. And why? Basically because there are many, pain points for developers and for people who manages development teams that haven't been solved in the last years. For example, like documenting code, it's a painful task. It's often neglected. Developers don't have time to do documentation or even understanding code. People when people move to project, they have maybe to learn a new language, or they have to quickly adapt to a new team, to new code and stuff, where we can help with all those problems that the industry and the developers typically have. And that's why we started developing this augmented coding project.
You gave example of documentation, and the interesting thing is that if you ask developers to do documentation, first of all, that's not what, their job is not to write down how things work. Their job is to build things, number one. Number two is that since they know everything inside out, they assume a lot of things that, hey, this is pretty obvious. So they will not. Documentation is like writing a manual that how to unscrew something. So there is always a third party who should look at it, and then that party should also be a user. So you're right, there are so many challenges. So now let's talk about, we have talked about the problem. Documentation was one example of so many problems. Let's talk about what is augmented coding and how does that come to solve many of these problems?
Great. Well, augmented coding is basically a platform that is AI powered to interact with developers in many ways. The heart of augmented coding is what we call language models. These are artificial intelligence models that are trained to understand both the way we as humans speak and we as humans communicate ideas, and the way we as humans tell computers how to do things, so programming languages. Historically, developers or we as humans had to do all the work. We had to learn how to tell computers how to do things. With this kind of AI models, modern natural language processing techniques, we can also give computers the ability to understand ourselves, to understand our language. So the idea behind augmented coding is to shorten the distance between programming language and human language. And that's how it works. We have many language models trained to understand, for example, Java, Python, C#, JavaScript, TypeScript, different programming languages. And we can give the developers functionalities to interact with these programming languages in their own natural language. For example, I can search for a piece of code just by using my own words, just by describing what I need. This is called semantic search. So I can just search for code using my words, using what I need, just describing what I need the code to do. And this is one of many functionalities of augmented coding.
So when we think about augmented, we always augment, we always add something on existing layer. So what exactly are you adding? Can you talk about how it works? Also, one more thing I would like to ask is, I'm also a very big Star Trek fan, where you computer compile the code, but that's not how it works in the real life. So talk a bit about the augmented real layer, and also, will you just stick to still have to type thing, or you will get voice also added at some point?
Well, let's first talk about augmentation, in this context. The idea is to augment, developers, let's say, scope, what developers understand from code. I can, for example, accelerate a developer trying to understand new code. I can accelerate developers, or maybe make developers get rid of, like very hard or time-consuming tasks, such as, for example, documenting code, as we were talking before. So this is the idea of augmenting. It's kind of augmenting their capacities, giving them like a Swiss knife to battle, like day-to-day software development tasks. For example, I can give you an IDE plugin that you can interact with. You will have to type, but the IDE will be constantly suggesting new ways to complete your code, and not just, given the syntax of the programming language, that is what typically IDE use, but also, understanding semantics, understanding what you are doing, what you are typing, what you are developing, and recommending you how to complete your code. This is another functionality augmented coding has, like this is contextual autocomplete. And again, you will have to type, but you have to type less, because probably some of these suggestions will be very useful to complete your lines of code, and you will be coding very, very fast while you interact with these kind of tools.
Awesome. Now, one thing is that we are building great technology. You did talk about the pain points that developers face, but there's also a demand also. There can be pain point, but everybody accepted, hey, that's how it works. We don't care about it. So can you also talk about the kind of demand is there for such kind of solution at the same time, if you can talk about your customers?
Totally, yes. And when you think about software development, you always have like two parties. You have the developers, they need tools, they love tools, and they are they have high standards for tools. Like IDEs are pretty cool today, and the software development tool belt is pretty cool today. But also you have like the managers, the people who has teams developing software, and they are also demanding good tools for following this kind of software development. With augmented coding, we want to, like cover both. We want to give the developers, cool tools. These kind of artificial intelligence-based tools are always, like pretty well welcomed by developers. They love it. They like, we are using AI. They like to see predictions out of their IDE. They want to see, like this documentation generation is pretty cool for them. But also for processes, you start seeing effectiveness. You start seeing developers going faster. You start seeing, development stories or tasks completed in a faster pace. So this is pretty useful for both sides. And you have a lot of demand, coming from the managers. You have demand coming from people trying to make software development more efficient, faster, because they have tighter and tighter roadmaps, aggressive time to market and stuff like that. So we can also tackle that. We can give developers the best tools so they can go faster and fulfill, business objectives.
Do you also do any open source or not?
Not yet. We are thinking of opening some kind of some parts of the tool. We have some parts of the tool are already patented, but we are thinking of opening some other parts of the tool. We haven't defined yet what parts. We have some open demos in our website, in augmentedcoding.com, that anyone can go and test them. And we are analyzing what we are going to do in that space.
Haldo, thank you so much for taking your time out today and talk about not only Globant, what your company does, but also augmented coding. And I look forward to talk to you again. If you have anything before we wrap this interview, please, this is your time.
Thank you so much. Yeah, just to wrap up, this kind of technologies, this AI focused on understanding language and understanding programming language, it's a pretty new technology. It's a quite open problem in the academic world, and we are kind of dealing with this technology, trying to compete in this space. Clients are very happy with our progress, and they are willing to see more and more. So let's keep us posted on this, and it will be good to talk again in the future.